All right, we want to go through what this universal air spring cradle is intended to be. You know, it's a fully engineered product made of plastic material, intended to be used for lifted applications. The main intention of this is to allow the air springs not to be the limiter and extension for over travel. We have 3 mounting hole options. The 2 outer ones are used for the airlift suspension kits. The center one's intended for other mounting options. Today we're going to kind of go over the setup of the universal air spring cradle 52500. Kind of go through the dimensional, expectations as you're setting up your suspension with your suspension kit and the air spring, potential airlift air spring spacer along with the cradle. So as you can see, current vehicle we got set up as a 2017 F250 with a aftermarket block lift spacer noted here. Obviously you can see the air spring is positioned with the lower bracket with a gap. In the calculations that we have, this is actually a 58 437 air spring. Has a recommended design height of 6 inches. So as we go through the calculations, the intent is to measure from the lower portion of the upper bracket to the top portion of the lower bracket. And in this situation, we've got about 10 1/4 inches. So with that, the 10 1/4 inches, you subtract your cradle height of 0.83. That gets you around 9 1/2 inches. With the air spring height, recommended height of 6 inches, you're probably going to want to pick a 4-inch lift spacer. That'll end up going in between the lower bracket and the air cradle. So this air cradle will be in 0.83, which actually I'm going to take that out, put it in like this. So while the air spring recommended design height is 6 inches, we try to target anywhere plus or minus 1 inch from that. And in this situation with the stack up that we have, that puts our design height on our air spring about 5 1/2 inches. That is plenty within the realms of what this air spring is intended to be produced for. You can see based on the center of this cradle, we're about 5 1/2, 5 5/8. So we're well within the intended design height of the air spring. Obviously for different lift spacers, lift positions, you'll have different heights. You may have a 4-inch lift with a 2-inch lift based on this design. You may have lower brackets that create a different, smaller distance. But again, the big thing is to look at the chart in your instruction manual, look at the bracket calculations, the cradle thickness, the design height, and make your adjustments accordingly, staying within those bounds. So as you can see, putting a 2-inch spacer in here in this situation with the air cradle, the air spring does not actually nest into the universal air cradle. Obviously that gives our dimension, for our air spring position wise, we're at about 7 1/2. And with the target being 6 plus or minus 1 inch, we're outside of that target. So in the situation that we just showed, we showed the lift spacer here down below. There are situations with certain lifts in which you could use the air cradle and won't need a lift spacer based on your calculations. As we identified here, we got bracket, which was our 10 1/4, minus our, we're going to call it 3/4 even though it's 0.83, equals your design height. And in this situation, obviously with what we have, we didn't have our air spring. This would end up being 9 1/2 inches. So we know we needed a lift spacer. So if we come down here and do the same calculations, we got 10 1/4 inches minus our 3/4 inches minus our lift spacer, which we indicated was a 4-inch lift spacer. That ended up getting us to 5 1/2 inches. And looking down here, the spring that we used was a 58 437. We indicate 6 inches, and in our instruction manual, we indicate anything within plus or minus 1 inch of that is acceptable. This is just a recommended ideal situation. So we are in alignment with that requirement.